Welcome to People's Church Podcast.
Good morning. Boy, the weather, wasn't that beautiful yesterday? How many just enjoyed the sunshine, watched the ice block melt? And what a beautiful day. And today, another one, and we might even get a few more and stuff. It's always nice when things thaw out. And that's what I hope church does for a lot of us when we come. During the week, it can harden up. We can be a part of so busy much in life that it's good to refresh around the Lord and to allow Him to soften us again. And I pray He has done that. Lord, do that in our hearts today. The subject that we're going to cover today will finish up on Wednesday night. Last week, we talked about heaven, and then we took it into detail on the Wednesday evening. And we'll be doing the same on hell. So today we're going to be introducing more kind of the power you have and the amazing power that God has given you. And then we'll finish up on the details come on Wednesday evening. So how to keep faith in times of chaos today, 4 basic questions. You know, your choices are incredibly important, and to make good choices, there are 4 basic questions you need to get right in life. And if you get these questions and answer them in a good way, you are going to actually be able to carry out a lot of amazing things in this world. So 4 basic questions, and they do reduce chaos in life. Most people's chaos that they create is because we're not fundamentally understanding this basis that these questions will reveal to us today. And if we don't fundamentally understand kind of these things, how do you make great choices? How do you begin to even navigate all of the choices? More than likely, you'll be derailed, deterred, deferred, and you will end up in a place where you maybe didn't want to ever see yourself being there. And I think that's how it's going to be when the Lord deals with all of humanity at His great white throne judgment. I think there's going to be people that just didn't really expect. And yet He's given all the power and all the preparation. There's a scripture in Ecclesiastes. In the book of Ecclesiastes, it's a scripture that speaks about that God has set eternity in our hearts. I have seen what difficult things God demands of us. God makes everything happen at the right time. Yet none of us can ever fully understand all He has done. And He puts questions in our minds about the past and the future. Today, I am giving you a choice. You can choose life and success or death and disaster. We're talking here about in Deuteronomy, in that particular portion. The power of choice to choose life or death or disaster or something far better is resident within our choice. So God has basically surrendered His sovereign choice absolutely with you to have the ability to sovereignly choose on some really important things. We're going to focus on a guy by the name of Moses today. You know him. You probably know his story. He has one of the most interesting stories. This is a guy that he is just absolutely fundamental to the Christian religion and the Jewish religion, and is so much a part of our understanding of how God works. He was the receiver of the law. He was the deliverer that led the nation Israel out of Egypt. He was 80 years old when that's going on. But let's start at his beginning, and let me read for you out of the book of Hebrews 11:23-27. By faith, Moses' parents hid him for 3 months after he was born. Why would they be doing that? Well, largely what had happened is they'd grown in such number, and so they were now slaves, and so they thought too many, so they began to kill the Hebrew male children. And they were doing that. In fact, they had aggressively, even right at the birth process, waiting to kill the child. But this particular couple, Moses' mom and dad, they hid him for 3 months after he was born, because they saw he was no ordinary child. The understanding there is that they saw layers. They saw that there was no way that this was right for them in any way to surrender their child. This child had something of that call of God, that place in God that this child had to survive. And they were not afraid of the king's edict. By the way, fear is nothing you want to pass on to your generations. There is generational fears, and you don't want to pass those on. What you want to do is exactly what this couple did, and they chose to not be afraid of the king's edict, Pharaoh's edict, and they were passing on a great courage, and it went to the heart of Moses. By faith, Moses, when he had grown up, refused to be known as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. Now, why would that be the case? Let's tell the story a little bit. Because they had hit him, 3 months, he's making a lot more noise, and so they know they got to do something about this. So what do? They tar up a basket, and they put it out in a bathing zone for some of the rich and famous. And Miriam, his sister, watches while the baby floats in a basket. The basket is noticed. Pharaoh's daughter gets one of her handmaidens to go and retrieve the basket. When she opens the basket, there is little Moses. She can't do it. She can't kill him. She can't do it. So what does she do? She takes them actually and adopts him. And Miriam comes into the scene, though, when she finds the basket and says, I know just the perfect woman that can nursemaid him while you are take him to the palace, and brought Moses' mother. So all set up. He grows up in Pharaoh's house. So let's understand what that means. Pharaoh's household would have been the best, most, how could we say, would be no better place on the planet Earth, educationally, health-wise, opportunity. Everything was basically provided to the maximum in Pharaoh's household. Whatever the world could provide, it was absolutely peaked in Pharaoh's household. He grew up in that. So he had the best of everything come his way. And he was being trained. He would have been trained militarily. He would have been trained in all leadership manners of leadership and construction. He would have had all of the basic skills that would be needed to lead a nation. It says in verse 24, by faith Moses, when he had grown up, refused to be known as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. He chose, notice these words, refused, chose. There's 5 words in here you want to know. He refused, he chose to be mistreated along with the people of God rather than to enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. He regarded disgrace for the sake of Christ as of greater value than the treasures of Egypt, because he was looking ahead to his reward. By faith he left Egypt, not fearing the king's anger. He persevered because he saw him who is invisible. So he feels this purpose in his heart. He knows he's got purpose. All of you have a sense of that. Ecclesiastes tells that God has set eternity in the hearts of men. More or less in every one of us, it's sort of this knowing that, yeah, you were meant for more, like the song said, that there is something far bigger for you. That is deduced within the core of your human heart and your soul, that you have always been meant for more. He set eternity in every heart like that. Now, we build a lot of things around that, and oftentimes you're not really in touch with that, but the fact is, you have had probably moments where you know that you were meant for more. You knew that there was something in you that looked beyond just the sky. You loved the beauty you're around, but you had a sense of something even more than that. And that is that sense of eternity in the heart. It's somehow what is locked and loaded within time in your experience. That it's beautiful, but at the same time, a sense of more. A sense of more. And that he has put in the human heart. He has set eternity in the human heart. And so your soul is eternal. And once in a while, you get that sense of that eternal sense of his presence or of his call or something on your life. So when we talk about Moses, he grows up, he's 40 years old, and he's got this sense of purpose. Now, at first, he's going to go about his purpose more like a social justice in the sense of like what will we say, violence and anger, and just kind of take it in his own hands, and the end justifies the means. And so he sets off. One day he's out and he sees a Jewish man being beaten, a slave being beaten by an Egyptian taskmaster. A government official is what they would be, and he's beating this Jewish slave. Well, in Moses, something rises up. And it's sort of that anger of that's happening. He looks around. He doesn't really see anybody else. So he goes and he takes on the Egyptian taskmaster and he kills him. He kills him. Now, in doing that, that means his own life is forfeit. But nobody saw, right? Except for the next day. He's out there trying to right the world himself again. Have you ever tried to just right the world yourself? He's out there trying to right that world himself again. And he sees one Jewish man beating up another Jew. So they're fighting. And he says, what are you doing? Your brothers, why are you doing that? And they just turn to him and say, what, are you going to do to us what you did to the Egyptian taskmaster? Right away he knows, they know I'm out of here. So he leaves, and he goes to a place called Midian, which is far more into the area of Sinai, but mainly around into Saudi Arabia. And he goes into Midian, and there for 40 years he leads sheep. And he gets married, he has a family. At 80 years of old, a burning bush appears on the mountainside. And it's not burning up. It's not going out. It's not getting less. It's just there. He investigates, and as he approaches, there's a voice that comes out of him and says, Moses, take off your sandals, for you're standing on holy ground. Whenever you respond to God, whenever that attraction brings you to God, there's going to be this sense of worship or awe in the moment. He immediately looses his sandals. He falls on his face, and the Lord talks to him. And he says, I've heard the cries of my people, and it's time. I put the purpose in your heart a long time ago. But now it's to be done my way. And he said, I want you to go back to Egypt and lead them out. They have this long exchange. Finally, Moses chooses yes. Not with that red-hot passion of change the world. It was that red-hot lack of passion for him at first. Now it was just going to be pure obedience. It wasn't a sense of adventure. How would you like at 80 God to tag you and say, I want you to lead a couple million people through a wilderness? You don't even want to do that with your kids anymore, all right? So it's like he's being tagged and tapped on this, and he's having this response that you would say is not just this adventure, go get it. It's obedience. Obedience is really the aspect of love that goes deeper than anything in the emotion. Emotion can be stripped away, but obedience is something that is on the altar, placed on the altar as love. And so he does this. Why was he able to do what he did? This guy was amazing. He settled 4 basic questions that you have to. And this world works at messing up these questions. In fact, the enemy actually works on these questions in your life to make sure that you do not answer them the way that God has made you, in line with that purpose or that connection in your heart. So that your choices are not coming off of clarity on the 4 most important things that you can build life upon. And the first question is, who am I? Who am I? You have to really sit back and meditatively approach some of these questions, because it's not as simple as, well, am I father and mother's son or daughter? No, who am I? Moses had to do that, did he not? In verse 24, we find that by faith Moses, when he had grown up, refused to be known as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. His definition up until that point was Prince Moses. His definition was clear from everybody else around, and they reinforced that definition. Who am I? What causes him to refuse this? Well, this is only a work of God in his heart and preparing him to answer this question correctly, even if he's not prepared to carry out the purpose yet. And if you don't answer that question correctly, how in the world are you going to resist when the world wants to form you into its mold? Who are you? Who am I? Well, if you ever ask that question, usually we'll give our profession. Who am I? Well, I am. And we might identify it by a family name. We have all these different markers. But who you really are is got to be found in the created, can I say, condition that God has made you in. Who are you? You know that story about I have decided to follow Jesus? And I've heard that before, and I don't know how accurate the whole thing is, but the premise is right. If you do not answer this kind of question, you cannot stand in the heat of bigger questions when they hit actual cost-paying times. For instance, you might be in a marriage, and it's like, how is it going? Not so good right now. Well, what's going to actually make it better is not answering who am I as, well, I'm a bad husband, or I'm a jilted wife, or I'm a... But if you are answering that far deeper than the situation or what the experience is, and if you're answering that and you are saying, well, who am I? Well, I'm a son or a daughter of God through Jesus. I'm Jesus' brother or sister. I am in the family of God. I have eternity. I'm an eternal creation of God with purpose. All of a sudden, all the different kinds of things, they want to take the ID position. And then it causes us to want to actually change the very ID. And then we wonder why we have this personal chaos that's growing. Who are you? Well, right now, I'm just an angry, upset person because of what's happened to me. Well, like Moses, then maybe go kill an Egyptian. Or maybe you are. We have to look at ourselves more fully and deeply than just reaction to what is going on around us or in us. Because it all matters. Who am I is the beginning and the very first thing that he answered. So he had to do two things in answering this. He had to refuse, and then next he had to choose. And that is, what are my choices, is the second question. What are my choices? Choices are the fundamental aspect of change or growth, or we would say the mining of all of the good that's in you, or increasing chaos, pain. Choices are the practice of something that makes you totally unique in all of God's creation amongst everything he's created, and is a little piece of him in you that you get to sovereignly make a choice. Choices. What are my choices? Well, in his, he chose to be mistreated. Now that is, I have decided to follow Jesus. He chose to be mistreated. He chose to be mistreated by his wife, by his husband, by his kids, by his boss. He chose to be mistreated by all of the injustices in his life that have come his way. He chose to be mistreated. Would you ever choose mistreatment? Not if you haven't answered who am I and understanding the power of your choices and the eternity of all of your choices. You can actually take this life and sacrifice it, waste it. Waste it to what is the chaos that's around you, internalize, build it, create it, bring more out. Or you can take a different route. And that is a route where you grow up and you refuse to be known in that way. and you will choose even mistreatment along with the people of God rather than to enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. Why are you saying, is there pleasure? Well, yeah, the Bible is, of course there is. If there was no pleasure in sin, who would do it? But he chose something bigger than that. And then it goes on and it says, he regarded disgrace for the sake of Christ as of greater value than the treasures of Egypt. So third question, what is really important in your life? Have you figured out those top 5? Have you looked at it and says, here's my top 5 values. Oh, and I hope that the Lord is on number 1. Pleasing the Lord, living a life of honor to God, that would be my number 1. My family would be right there. My wife, my daughter, my grandkids, they would be next. I value them. They are of value. And I want to be the kind of husband and father and grandfather that's going to bless them. Values. What are your values? Do you believe in honesty and truth? What are your values? Are you willing to be a servant? What is your value? We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. And the fourth question is, what are my goals? Once I get who am I understand power of my choices, and I need to change those choices. And now it's going to align with what's really important, my values. You have to choose your value system, folks. If you don't choose it, somebody else will import it for you. And then what are my goals? Where am I aiming my life? Am I aiming it towards things that matter at all? Am I disciplining my life towards those things? What am I aiming my life at? Those are your goals. So let's talk about these 5 practices. The first thing that when you answer these questions in a clear way in your life, is now you have to do these 5 practices. And this is really important because if, again, the enemy is going to work on you to try to corrupt both these decisions and these practices. Number 1, relax and be you. This is such a big deal. It's a huge deal. Sometimes we never grow out of our childhood. And we are forming ourselves around the acceptance of some other group. So in essence, we are giving them the defining value of our life. So what is going on? Well, they are determining who am I. So they're telling you who you are and who you must be. And if you're not going to be that, you have no value to this group. No acceptance in this group. This is such a destructive model of being you because you're not being you. And you need to relax and to be you and not work at fitting in with some group's mentality or idea. You must fit instead with that answer question, who am I? The sooner you answer that, the better that you're going to make in decisions and the better life you will build. I was about 12 years old when that early for me, when it was like, who am I? I knew. And so everything that was going to test that through all of those incredible years coming up through, the junior high and high school and then into the early challenges of full-on adult and independent living, everything was filtered through a knowledge of who am I? My faith did lead. I didn't make all the right choices. I certainly made some errors in all aspects of my life. But here's the deal. Who am I always allows me to mitigate those disasters and not have a life of building chaos. Instead, it allows me to live in the grace of God where I can relax because I know who I am. I am loved by God. I am cared for by God. He's not holding things against me because of Jesus in my life. Instead, he is blessing me. And why does he bless me? Because he's good. Just because he is good. So who am I? Well, I'm somebody that can relax and be myself. You pretty much get what you get with me, people. This is who I am. Some people don't like my sense of humor. My wife doesn't like my sense of humor sometimes. So join the crowd. Some people don't like the way that I might actually, play a sport, because I usually play to win. And I figure if you're going to sweat, it better pay off. It's the idea of being who you are wherever you are, and relaxation is key. That doesn't mean you disconnect from people or their value or what they're saying. It doesn't mean that you move away from change where you need to change. It means that the basic question is who I am is absolutely answered. And now that leads me to be able to do a practice that says I can relax and be you. I can just be myself. Verse 24, again, we find this again, where he says, when he had grown up, he refused to be known as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. By faith, he did that. By faith. You've got to relax about what God made you to be. You know, we talked about on Wednesday, I think it was, when you get to heaven, you're going to wonder, like, am I going to be me? Of course you're going to be you. Will people recognize me? Well, of course they're going to recognize you. Yeah, it's going to happen. No problem. You say, like, are we going to then know one another? Yeah, you're going to know one another. Well, why wouldn't you? Well, I don't want to know them. You may not be there yourself. The idea around this is that being you is you're being what God made you. And in fact, in heaven, you will be perfectly the you that God has always intended to be full bore. Christ doesn't dismiss what he created. He reveals, and he absolutely causes it to be exposed in the most vulnerable and the most clear way. He doesn't dismiss who you are. You need to relax and be you. In fact, the sign of great faith in a person is not that they're changing everything around them, it's that they're changing themselves to be more what God made them to be. Relax and be you. Second, accept responsibility in life as it pertains to you. Well, this is the practice coming out of choices. What are my choices? Well, you have all kinds of choices. You have choices about the roles in your life, how you're going to practice it, choices about the things that you will focus on for change. You have absolutely the choices about what's going to be important and drive your life. All of these choices are your choices. They are a genuine power from God, and it has genuine results. How many here have ever raised a kid? Don't raise your hands, because most of us have. When you raised a kid, how many raised a kid? Now, this one you can raise your hands on. How many raised a kid that you loved every one of their choices? I know who did. My mom. You don't love every one of the choices that your kid's going to make. You're not going to love every one of the choices your kid's going to make. But where's the power? Have you ever tried to control their choice as they get a little older and go on? I mean, sending a 21-year-old to their room doesn't work. You can't control that. Because now they've become an adult like Moses did, and he refused, and the next one says he chose. And that means that they have to be responsible, because God transfers responsibility from you as a parent to that child through the maturing of the choice. And when the choices mature, so does the accountability, so does the responsibility upon them. You need to accept responsibility in life as it pertains to you. You can never grow in life by abdicating your responsibility for the choices that you make. You have to accept that.
This is not just Bible, this is psychology. This is how the human condition can actually become healthier, is to accept responsibility. How you preserve psychological issues is don't accept responsibility. Accept responsibility. And you say, but you know what, there was a lot of factors there, like I had some negative influences. Then you need to go back a question to figure out again, who am I? Once you figure that out, now you can move forward in accepting responsibility, because you're saying, I know who I am, and now I am responsible for all of my choices, and I accept that responsibility. In Moses' case, in verse 25, he chose to be mistreated along with the people of God rather than to enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. So can you imagine this choice being made? You are in the pinnacle of civilization's best that can be offered. Can you imagine his buddies? Can you imagine those in the palace that were serving him, and all of a sudden he's disregarding all of that and making a choice that puts him completely outside that? They would be thinking he's nuts. Why are you doing this? This is what everybody would want, and yet you are tossing it. Well, how can he do that? He knew who he was. And he accepted responsibility for that choice. And he chose mistreatment. That's a mature response, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work without figuring out, who am I? And then going from there on to, what are my choices? Another one is clarify your life's system of values. You got to have a very clear value system. If you don't have a clear system of values, which you do have in some way or shape, but you need to choose the clarity around this and get them really clear. Here's really what matters for me in this life. This is what matters. If I'm at the end, I want to have that this has been the things that have directed me in my life. In this case, it would be, I want to be who am I? I want to be who God has made me to be. I want to be somebody in this world that God's leadership has blessed much in this world through who I am. He's blessed the family, he's blessed the friends, he's blessed the business, he's blessed so many things just by who I am, and I've let him bring that out. And the more that I've let him lead, the more the blessings have come. Who are you? What are your choices? And what is really important? Clarify your life system of values. Sometimes as parents, we kind of go at it this way, and there are seasons of parenting, and it changes as they grow. And they're supposed to change. But I've observed, and it's a condition that you will see, is that the parent prolongs the individuating of the child. So now you got really adults that have not individuated. They have not become who they are supposed to be. Rather, they are still having a problem with not being who they've been created to be. They're not accepting responsibility because they have never had to. They haven't clarified their life system of values because they've never really needed to. It was imposed. The world's value system, here it is. Power, position, popularity. Verse 24. Power, he refused to be known as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. He had it, power. He had position, and he had popularity. Now, it was the type of popularity you better like him more. Power, position, popularity. Have you ever watched power destroy people? Have you ever worked for somebody where power just went to their head? Have you ever worked or seen or observed the corruption of power, the corruption of popularity, or the corruption of position? And the world's values are those three, and Moses had them all. He grew up in it. Next, pleasure. Verse 25. He chose to be mistreated, and then it goes, rather than to enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. Now, that would have been maximized opportunity for him because it would have been encouraged and excused. And he turned completely away from it. That's the world's value system, though. Power, position, popularity, and then pleasure. And then finally, possessions. In verse 26, he regarded disgrace for the sake of Christ of greater value than the treasures of Egypt, and he had them. He had them. Man, you and I look at our little accounts, and we don't want to lose anything out of that account, you know? Do you know what Moses' account was? The treasures of Egypt, the world power, the place. There was more treasure in Egypt as a wealthy state in those years than the rest of the world. The idea is he walked away from it. He not just walked away from it. He completely looked at it and says, this is not going to be my value. How do you do that? Know who you are. Be responsible for your choices when you figure out who you are. I have decided to follow treasures. I have decided to follow popularity. You say, well, what do you mean? That's not, yes, it is a decision. It is. Figure it out. Because if you don't accept responsibility for your choices, it could be a day that you will be forced to accept responsibility for your choices. Number 4, stay focused on the end game. Verse 26, 27. It says, because he was looking ahead to his reward. By faith he left Egypt, not fearing the king's anger. He persevered because he saw him who is invisible. God, Jesus. You got to keep focused on the end game. Everything has an end game. You know that in this world. By the way, your health has an end game. Everything. Wealth has an end game. Everything has an end game. Your existence on this planet right now has an end game. So you got to keep your eyes on a bigger end game than what this planet can actually offer you as your end game. And that's what Moses recognized. He recognized who he was. He was there with God's purpose in his heart. Now, he needed to go through a whole lot of things to finally get to the place where he carried that out fully. But he was focused on the end game. Hebrews 12, 1 and 2 says, as for us, we have this large crowd of witnesses around us, so then let us rid ourselves of everything that gets in the way and of the sin which holds on to us so tightly. And let us run with determination the race that lies before us. Let us keep our eyes fixed on Jesus, on whom our faith depends from beginning to end. He did not give up because of the cross. On the contrary, because of that joy that was waiting for him, he thought nothing of the disgrace of dying on the cross. And he is now seated at the right side of God's throne. So he's saying, look, you got to keep your eyes on the end game, on Jesus. You got to keep it. If you're going to follow, you keep your eyes on this end game. That's what Moses did. He kept his eyes on that. What could have taken his eyes off of that? Confusion about who am I? Who am I really? What is it? The title of your business, the title of your profession, the title of your accomplishments, the amount in your account? What is it? Who am I really? What defines me? Separates me from a person sitting next to me? Who am I? What are my choices in this life? What are my choices? And am I willing to relax and be who he's made me to be and accept responsibility in this life as it pertains to me? That's a healthy place to get. Really healthy. Now you can begin to formulate in your world and carry out the purposes of God. You clarify your system of values. You reject the world's value system, and you stay focused on what the end game is. For Moses, he thought it was over when he created a crime and it had to leave. When he tried to stop injustice by creating an injustice. When he thought it had to be his strength that had to bring about the purpose of God. No, he had to go and he had to continue to figure out, what is it like then to be a slave? To be mistreated? What is it like to be taken off of, all of what the world values? All of it's gone, and here you are in the Midian desert leading sheep. He had to figure that out, but he stayed focused. And lastly, be clear on these particular realities of life. God made you to love you. Don't let anybody ever tell you anything different than that, because it says it himself in Jeremiah. I have loved you with an everlasting love. God made you to love you, but here's the part where your own sovereignty kicks in and wants your love back. That's a reality. Be clear about this. God does love you, and you may not love you. You may have many people in your life that don't love you. That is not what matters when it comes to the end game. What matters is that you are very, very clear on the reality that God loves you, but that he wants your love back. Be clear on this particular reality. You were made to last forever. You weren't made for a few years. You weren't made for 70, 80 years. What are we at now? I think right around 70, what is men? About 59, and women are about 89 or something like that. I think we're around 78 to 82 average lifespan. You weren't made for that number. You weren't made for a number. You were made for a Father in heaven who sent his Son, who loves you and wants you to love him back. And you are filled, if you're a Christian, with the Spirit of the living God. And he is bringing that eternal sense of you into the world you now live in. You are made to last forever. Secondly, be clear on this reality. God has prepared 2 eternal places. We're going to talk in detail on that on Wednesday night. God has prepared 2 eternal places. There's no neutral in eternity. There's no sense of, like we kind of go into eternity in neutral and then I can make a choice. Doesn't happen. Your sovereignty is now. You have to answer these questions. You are sovereign to figure out, who am I? Because you've been given an ID. What are my choices? What is really important? And what are my goals in this life? So you need to recognize that there are absolutely 2 eternal places, which means there's a Y in the road in life. There's a Y in the road in so many things, isn't there? There's a Y in the road in relationships. There's a Y in the road in every role you've got. You're going to make different choices down this path, down that path. There's lots of Ys in the road. Why would you think there wouldn't be a Y in the road when it comes to eternal life? It's huge. It's the biggest decision you're ever going to make. And there is no neutral. Only 2 places, and they're eternal. Know also this, and be very clear. You choose where you'll spend eternity. Your sovereignty is intact. No matter what you've gone through, no matter what has dislodged you from, maybe the happy things of life, or maybe what has created for you difficulty, no matter how you maybe have shrunk your world back from anything of purpose or meaning, you don't lose the sovereignty to choose. And the basic choice is where you'll spend eternity. Now also be very clear about this reality. There is no second chance after you pass, after you die. We always hear the jokes about St. Peter's gates, right? You're going to get there and your mom's going to get you in because she's ahead of you and she's going to look after it for you. I would say that would be an absolute problem with you actually becoming your own person. There is no St. Peter's gates where you're evaluated. There's just a God you either know, there's a Jesus that has saved you, and that there's a Spirit of God in you, and that's the case, or it's not. I wonder which one of these things we talk about today would be the most important thing you'd want to leave with your children. You know, kids, we got a great palace here. We've got some power. We've got some economic power. We have some educational power. We have some accomplishment power. We really have some power here. We've got some great positions. We have gotten to a place where possibilities have emerged amazingly. Whatever we want to do, it's like a place of comfort. We have that position, or we have that popularity. You know, like, boy, you're really excelling in what you're doing in the sport or in this educational environment, whatever you're doing, kid, you're doing great. That's what matters, and that gets the whole deal. But that's not their big why. That's not who they are. That's something they're doing. Who am I really? What about pleasure? Boy, what a numbing experience that can be. And of course, emptying. What about possessions? Nice to have. Very nice. What why do you want them to be prepared for? Which why do you need to get back in touch with? Because there's coming a day when he's going to ask you the question that he asked each of the 3 servants that he left a talent of money to one, 2 talents to another, 5 talents to another. And he said, I'm going away, and then I'm going to come back, and I'll give an accounting. So go, invest, go do some great things. Go. And he's going to come, and then these servants came. First came the one with 5, and he doubled it to 10. 10. He took what the master gave him, made the most of it, and the master goes, oh, wow. Well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into the joy of the Lord. 2 to 4, well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into the joy of the Lord. 1. Now this guy, it's an interesting guy. He just buried it. You know what, I don't even want it. Look, you go do your thing, master, but don't put me at risk. I don't want your displeasure. In fact, I don't even care too much about your pleasure. I just want safety. See, he buries it. The safest place he could put the money was in the ground. That's what he thought. The master returns and he holds this guy to account. And in that account, he says to him, so what did you do? I buried it. You buried it. I buried it. Here it is. Get the dirt off. Here it is. Here's the money you gave me. That was a complete no idea about who am I. No idea about what are my choices. I need to accept responsibility. No idea in what is really important. I got my own values and they are all subject to be safe. Get comfort. Don't stress yourself. What are my goals? No idea, because the fact is, my only goal is safety. I have no bigger goal than that. He wants to take the wise out of the road. No, we're responsible. We're responsible. So let's finish with this thought for you. Have we got some of those signs Ready to go, James, back there? Yeah, okay, throw up whatever you got. I'll see what you got here. These are road signs. I don't know which ones they got. Slow, 1-lane bridge ahead. Has anybody driven the Maui Road, the Hana Highway before? There used to be all filled with these anyway, never mind. It was a terrible experience. So you come up to it, and who's got the right of way, and who's going to take that, and it was sometimes very messy. Sometimes very messy. Or how about this one, bridge out? What would you do with that one? Bridge out ahead, right? Bridge out. What are you going to do? Hit the gas pedal? Just on Smokey and the Bandit, they did. What are you going to do? Well, I don't think that means speed up. Well, there's a sign. I'm not even sure, but it looks like it's a bridge that lifts and then there's water. So we would say this is certainly a sign you want to really respond correctly to. God didn't just give you signs. God gave you Jesus. And that's the biggest sign that one day God calls us all to answer because he created the why. Jesus said, I am the only way to the Father. He created the why. Because you didn't even have an option before for anything good. And now you do. So know who you are. Figure it out. What are your choices? What is really important in this life? What's going to be the leading values for you? And what are my goals? What am I working on, applying myself towards? Let's stand together. This Wednesday, we're going to dive deeper on these and go into the one nobody wants to talk about. And yet, did you know Jesus talked more about hell than he did heaven? Well, if you really believed in that why, guess what? I know conversations you're going to be having with people around you and within your family. Why would Jesus talk so much about it? Because he loves you. Because he wants you to know that. And he's provided a way. Father, as we bow our heads before you, we thank you that you love us. You love us with everything you've got. But Lord, you've created us with the ability to choose, and thereby we can have relationship with you long before we, Lord, pass into the why of our eternity. Lord, we can be walking with you, and we can have chaos reduced in our life so that, Lord, we are focused and going on in accomplishment the things that you want us to do on this planet. Lord, I pray that you'll bless people's understanding today in their own situation of how important it is for them to understand that Jesus Christ is the only way to the Father, that it's through him that all salvation is brought, and that our arrogance to stand in the way of God's love and his plan of love only puts us in peril at the biggest why. God, I pray that you'll open hearts. And even as we talk deeper about it this Wednesday, Father, I pray that you'll let this bite us to a degree that says, oh, Lord, thanks for your love. Thanks for your love. But put in us a passion for people and the value of people, the value of souls, and that you are called to be us, who we are meant to be. So in Christ's name, I pray this blessing upon us today. Amen.
Thanks for listening. If you find this program helpful or would like to learn more, please give us a call, 780-539-0572, or email mail@peopleschurchgp.com.